friends, and welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and today I have my good friend Craig Stammler with me. Craig and I work together, and he's got a lot of time, a lot of knowledge in the mortgage business, and I would say, as a mortgage guy, this guy brings a whole new level of like zen to the mortgage space. This is a high stress world, and somehow, Craig, you've figured out how to take all the choppiness out of life and just kind of he's a smooth operator. So I'm anxious to dig in here with Craig. We're going to talk a little bit about just kind of what's going on in the market. We're going to talk about some leadership principles, and maybe he can share with us a little bit about how he keeps a level head in this very chaotic market. So Craig, welcome to Market Shares.
Thanks, Tony. Glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. And, it was funny that you just bring that up with regards to, having an even keel. And I was just talking to Tanya last night about, for myself, when you're in a position of leadership, it's important to do what you can for yourself so that you can be better for your people. And for myself, I constantly try to do better. And like our similar stories where we've given up alcohol over the last few years, it's really changed my life. And, I think that part of it is not getting involved in some of the stories that are happening and putting myself in a situation, and people will say, hey, Craig, you make it look easy. And really, I just don't try to get too involved in the story. I try to listen to the story and solution for the story, but not become the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I think there's so many stories that we could rabbit holes we could go down, right?
Oh, yeah.
So many things we could emotionally get involved with, because things that happen in people's individual lives to them might be the biggest thing going on in their life. Mm-hmm. And so they come at it with a lot of emotion, a lot of intensity.
Correct.
And, for people in leadership roles who have a lot of those situations going on, it's easy, I think to maybe associate a little bit too deeply with what's going on. I think you got to listen, like you said, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, a key part of leadership, I think, is being approachable, being someone that people are comfortable coming to talk to, and then being able to help work through things, but without it completely sucking you in. Because I think one of the challenges all of us deal with if we're in leadership is we can get taken off of, our kind of best operating plane if we constantly get knocked off, right?
Absolutely.
And other people's energy can they can pull the energy out of you, and so it's difficult to balance not letting that happen while also being empathetic and helping people solution for the challenges that they're dealing with.
Well, and I think as leaders, you want a solution for the problem. So it's very easy for you to become that problem.
Right.
Because, you care about your people, you care about the business, you care about the situation. So you want a solution, and you don't want to have your people not be happy. But in the same respect, there's a certain amount of leadership that needs to take a look at the landscape, understand what you're dealing with before you dive in. And I feel like for me, alcohol, I think for myself, has really allowed me not to feed into some of the stories that I was kind of feeding into and allowing those emotions that were high intensity. You wake up groggy one morning, somebody cuts you off, you start becoming that energy.
Yeah. Well, the alcohol thing is interesting. How long have you not had any alcohol?
So it's just become over 2 years in October.
All right. You're a little ahead of me. So I think I'm at 18 months or
That's awesome.
Might be 19 months.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think both of us, and we've talked about this a little bit when we first met, is it's not like alcohol was an all-consuming, like it's not like I had a thing that happened. So many people are like, when you quit alcohol, they're like, oh, well, what happened? I was like, well, I decided that I wanted to be healthy, and I'm not getting any younger, and I want to be the best version of myself, but it is interesting when you think back on really, I would almost call it the distraction that alcohol creates, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, that waking up groggy, that's a couple hours of any given day that maybe you're just not operating at your best. Or in those evenings when you're at an event and now you all of a sudden got some loose lips and you're talking about things that maybe you shouldn't have, or you're veering off of track, conversations you would never have if you were sober, and some people say, oh, well, that's the social lubrication. That's a good thing. I'm like, nah, it's not always a good thing, So I have also found that not having any alcohol has been it's just been a game changer. And people ask me like, is that like a forever thing for you? And I'm like, well, I mean, unless I can figure out at some point why it would make sense to reintroduce poison into my diet, like probably I'm not going to drink anymore. I just don't see the lift in it, and it is shocking to me, kind of how prolific it is in so many industries. Definitely in the mortgage and real estate industry, but I think a lot of sales industries, it's really just in society itself, and.
I think it becomes so common, like unfortunately, and you probably could agree, today we're kind of the weird guys.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you go out and you're not drinking and people are like, what's wrong?
Right.
And, that was, I think, the hardest part to overcome. But, ultimately, just like my diet for the most part, I try to eat for feel instead of for taste sometimes. And although I eat good food, I think that ultimately sometimes we eat certain things that we know maybe aren't great for us, or consume certain things that aren't good for us, and ultimately it affects our bodies and our mindset. And as we know how important mindset is in our business, it's just important to ensure that you're doing your best for your people.
Yeah.
Being your best version, like you said.
100%. I mean, I think that you can be a top performer. You could be in the top 10%. You could be in the top 20%. A lot of people, that's their goal, right? I'm going to just be in the top 20, I think that if you really want to be operating at your very highest and best potential, there's just no way that you can do it with a poor diet, without any exercise in your life, without any sort of mindfulness. I mean, these are all kind of prerequisites for optimizing your performance. And so, for me, and luckily for me, and I've talked about it on this podcast a little bit, the book, right? The Easy Way to Control Alcohol. For me, I read that book and it was easy, you know. But you talk about the weirdness. I'll just say this, and we'll move on from this topic, because I didn't know we were going to go down this road, but that's okay. It's a great topic. And I think more people, we need to normalize the fact that it's okay for those people that choose to have a healthier life and not drink alcohol. But I took about a year and a half off a couple of years ago, back in 2020, and at that point I had not really thought about the fact that I wasn't ever going to drink again, right? So I thought, someday I will, and then and I did, and it was kind of ceremonial, right? I was like, I'm gonna kind of break the seal here, but it was really odd for me during that first year and a half that I didn't drink, when I would go to events, and I was very self-conscious about the fact that people were going to ask me, like, why are you not drinking? It always became these awkward conversations, to your point.
Yeah.
This time around, I don't give a shit. I mean, I just don't care.
Yeah.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I'll talk to people about it.
Right.
I don't hide the fact.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll grab like a mocktail or even a non-alcoholic beer.
Sure.
If I'm in an event that has that. I don't do that a lot. The first time I did, I kind of used non-alcoholic beer as kind of a crutch.
Sure.
Now, when I'm in social settings, I'm like, hey, if they have a non-alcoholic beer, I might have that just to mix it up, because soda water and Diet Coke can get a little bit. You probably don't do the Diet Coke thing, miss being so healthy, but anyways, so it's just funny how your mindset, even around this, I'm like, look, I don't care, and frankly, it gives me opportunities to talk about it, and I like to normalize it a little bit. And now you're seeing it in society. I mean, the fact that Formula One, which is really expensive, their number one sponsor is Heineken Zero.
Right.
You see it plastered everywhere.
Sure.
And I'm like, that just tells. And in Europe, I think very low. They drink a lot in Europe, right? They drink at lunch, but it's very low alcohol content. It's totally different than here, and I think it's a thing, man. I think that more people are recognizing that you don't need to just, Anyways, we will move on and talk about the mortgage business, but I want to just get a little background really quick on you, Craig.
Sure.
So people get to know you a little bit. So how long have you been in the mortgage business? I know you've only worked at a handful of companies over the years, big companies.
Yeah.
So walk us through that journey real quick, and then we'll jump into a few other things I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, absolutely. Started off my mortgage career actually working at Best Buy, where I had a couple of regional leaders and a broker owner asked me to join mortgage. I was 20 years old. I'm coming up on my 25th year in mortgage, and started off as a broker. I realized that I was ripping people off, not knowing what I was doing, as I had my grandma come and tell me that, hey, honey, I don't think 3 points in a prepay is something that I need. And then I quickly realized that I should align myself with a major organization. So I took the opportunity, moved from Sonoma County, where I'm from, to Sacramento and started my mortgage career back in early 2000s. I then got back into leadership as I was leading at Best Buy in roughly 2008 and became a sales leader for Countrywide. And then shortly after, we joined Wells Fargo. Right then and there, I had a leader at Wells Fargo that gave me an opportunity to apply for a job in Ontario. At the moment, I thought it was Canada, but it was in Southern California. And I applied for the job. I didn't know that I would get it, but ultimately, it was my first manager opportunity, and the manager gave me the opportunity to move to Southern California. At the time, it was closer to where my wife was going to school in Las Vegas. And for me, it was just an opportunity to coach and develop and lead, which I knew that was a part of me in 2008. I almost left the business because I was just originating. I didn't feel I had that fulfillment or purpose. So ultimately, the manager opportunity in 2008 really changed my career. I was growing branches. There was a $5 million branch that we had in Southern California that we turned into 3 offices doing $20 million. But then in 2012, my dad passed away, and I wanted to get closer to Sonoma County. And the Silicon Valley opportunity opened up within Wells Fargo. So my boss at the time gave me the opportunity to come back. Didn't know about the Silicon Valley then, and it was a great couple years from 2012 to 2015. I ended up becoming the #1 branch within Wells Fargo there as a satellite branch. And so, quickly I've realized that I can implement my strategies in different markets and succeed, and felt very confident with my leadership abilities within any market. So then in 2015, Santa Rosa, which is really where I'm from, I had the opportunity to go back home. And at that point, we had a baby girl, and we wanted to have another kid and want to get closer to family. So I ended up moving to Northern California and leaving the #1 branch in Wells Fargo for a satellite branch again. Turned that into a President's Club branch in Santa Rosa, and then 2017, late October, I was contemplating leaving. My divisional manager at the time that I was very fond of, I gave a call. He was no longer with the organization, and said, hey, I got this opportunity at Loan Depot, which many people called Home Depot at the time. Yeah. And it was humbling, but I took an area manager opportunity then in 2018, $200 million area into $3 billion before we had left in 2022. And then, with the market being that Bay Area is really the region that I serviced, we needed to ensure that we were servicing that market well. And in that time frame, I did not feel like my market was doing what it could do, and we turned a $200 million market into $3 billion. And ultimately, for me, I felt like once the organization went public, I needed to kind of find a different home for myself. And so jumbo was very important, and we moved to US Bank. And ultimately, like you said, worked for a lot of the largest, biggest organizations that there are out there, because I always want to work with the best. I feel like if I'm going to recruit and attract talent and be a part of something special, it's important to align yourself with an organization that's going to support the people. And I know that New American Funding, after interviewing the top 15 lenders, was the place that I wanted to hang my hat on for the rest of my career. And so very excited for this opportunity, very excited to work with you. Yeah. And, looking forward to the growth here we're going to be having.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it sounds to me almost like U.S. Bank, although it's a great organization, was kind of a safe haven move, mm-hmm. right? It really, product wise, it got a little bit choppy, as far as jumbo offerings in the IMB space there for a while. Yeah. And that was something they had an appetite for. And even U.S. Bank, They tend to, and I would say all banks, I don't want to even just pigeonhole U.S. Bank. It's not about them, but banks in general tend to really come in and out of the jumbo space as their appetite sees fit. Mm-hmm. What you can lend that money at versus what you can earn on that money in other places. When that spread closes, jumbo's not as good of an opportunity, and when there isn't anywhere else to put your money, well, hey, let's lend on real estate transactions for high net worth borrowers who are also going to bring assets into our bank and that relationship. And so it does kind of seem to ebb and flow. I have felt like there's definitely times where the banks have the advantage in that space when their appetite is there for it. We're more in the IMB space. What we have to have is, 12, 14, 18 different relationships with banks because even them are going to come in and out. And so it's a little bit of a different flavor. Have you found that navigating from the bank environment back to the IMB space in today's current environment is working for you and your people and getting you the product that you need?
Yeah, no, good question. I think it was very important, as we knew while talking over the months that we were working together, that, I didn't know whether I would find an IMB that met the needs that I was looking for to service the Bay Area, to your point, because of the banks kind of having an anomaly on the market when they want to your point. But I also knew that they had one product and they're just hanging on one product. And when that decided to go up or in and out, ultimately that's when the applications went in or out as well. And I saw some things as well too that I didn't care for, when they let go of a whole bunch of their producers that had been with the organization for a long time, it just showed that I could be replaceable as well.
Right.
And I didn't care for that. But my people are thriving. Ultimately the people that followed me, from different organizations aren't, all heavily jumbo as well. So, I encourage those that are out there that, maybe don't do, more than 25% jumbo to consider looking at, an IMB, because you don't want to be pigeonholed to the rates of a bank consistently when you can create your own brand and your own business by just pivoting slightly to additional products like non-QM.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, it seems to me like the world today, non-QM to me is a bigger opportunity than the jumbo space. Obviously, we're in Seattle right now, and thanks for coming up.
Yeah.
We're up here in the Seattle market. We need good jumbo product, but non-QM, it seems like, is really this emerging market. It's been kind of trickle along for really years, but now it's definitely, I know a lot of people who've made it 25-30% of their business is non-QM. Some people even more than that have really specialized in it, and you're not going to get access to that much product diversity in a bank. So to your point, if you can just pivot a little bit, and I think a lot of people that are in the bank space know that, hey, it's like you look at your book, you're like, oh, I do 60% jumbo. Well, part of that is because you work at the bank and everyone knows that you have the product. And so it does kind of feed on itself, where if you were to pivot a little bit, make it known that you have, some diversity of product, chances are your percentage is going to go down and you're going to ultimately do more business.
Well, and 70% of the business nationwide is done in the IMB space as well. So you got these microclimate environments like Seattle and Silicon Valley that are a bank-driven markets. But I think that, to your point, there's other solutions. We can offer 10% down. Ultimately that's not being offered with many or any bank institutions today, and that allows people to take that income, like you've shared on your other podcast, I believe. Where you can use that money and reinvest it. And these are solutions that we're offering. And I think that what we have to just try to do is allow these loan officers to create a brand for themselves. When you're at the bank, they have to market a certain way. They have to be a certain way. They have to dress a certain way. We're our authentic selves. We get to do and be who we want to be, and that's what I believe is important for our future.
That's a really good point. I think the ability to, everyone talks about creating your own brand, and it's difficult to do when you're working for, a bank who doesn't allow you that flexibility.
Right.
I think that's really good. So let's go back. Let's diverge a little bit about your trip up here. So you're interesting because you live in Boise, Idaho today. So you moved out of the Bay Area to Boise. And you serve now the Northwest and Northern California, but your mode of transportation, tell us about your mode of transportation around the region.
So in 2021, I turned 40 and got myself a present that has now become the family van. So I have a van called Miles. We named the van.
Okay.
It's a Sprinter van, but it has intention because for me, while commuting back and forth from the Bay Area and during COVID, I really was restricted with my travel, and so I didn't like that, and I wanted to have my freedom, and so I bought a Sprinter van for mainly my birthday, and just wanted to treat myself because I don't really get to do that. If you know me, I'm very frugal sometimes, and so it allowed me as I travel once a month for about a week. We homeschool our kids, so my wife gets to visit the family while I make my rounds, and then we congregate and we head back. And then I kind of repeat that once a month. And then on top of that, with living in Idaho, there's so many beautiful areas to visit, like Yellowstone and Hot Springs and McCall and Redfish Lake and Stanley. They're only an hour and a half, 2 hours away, Sun Valley, and so I felt like in order to explore all these beautiful areas, it'd be nice to have something like a Sprinter van to be able to travel. Admittedly, I don't do as much camping or outdoor activities as I would like, but it gets its miles on on the van a lot with just the travel that I do for work, and makes it very convenient. I'm on a cleanse right now that allows me to store everything in my refrigerator and make these trips and move office to office and not really feel like I'm lugging luggage around or moving in and out of hotels, because I can utilize that as kind of a base.
Yeah, well, that's different. I don't know anyone else that's traveling around as a regional in a Sprinter van. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you can spend the time in Idaho. You can you're in market often in NorCal, and your family goes with you. Is that what you're?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, my family is so important. When you lose your house in 2017 in the NorCal fires, which changed my life in a positive way. I think that ultimately people could be sad for me or feel like I'm upset by that, but ultimately it pushed me to leave the organization that I was with because I was scared, and it was the best decision that I made. Getting back into the IMB space and feeling fulfilled in the job that I was doing to serve my people. So I'm definitely excited for this opportunity and just the ability for me to drive my van around, because now driving here over the last 2 days, it's really not that bad. Especially drove into the Tri-Cities market, was about a 4-hour drive, and then from there into Yakima, and then another 2.5 hours into Everett, where I'm here today. And so not that bad. And then we'll make my trip down to Oregon in the next day or two, and then back home. And so I've enjoyed the landscape and the opportunity.
Yeah, well, I think you'll like it more. You get to go to Montana and some of those markets. It'd be very cool. Well, right on. Well, let's talk a little bit about the mortgage just market in general. So, continued to be a challenging year in 2024. I was optimistic. I'm always optimistic, right? I think you're a pretty optimistic guy too. I think you have to be in our roles. But I was thinking, I think 2024 was a much better year than 2023. Like 2023 is the year that we all just want to forget. 2024 was better, but it wasn't really the breakout year. And I don't know that we're going to get a breakout year. We'll see. It would really take rates to something to happen that would really make rates go down. The path we're on right now is a slow, steady decline with some ups and downs along the way. So I don't foresee something overnight making the mortgage industry easy again, if you will, like we kind of had during the unicorn years of 2020 and 2021, where there was so much stimulus put into the market after COVID hit, and the Fed was buying mortgage-backed securities. Right. They were buying treasuries. They were pumping money into the market, and things went crazy. And then you had, at the same time, everyone wanted to move, right? I mean, the great migration. So now we have all these additional transactions happening. Rates are super low, so refinances are happening. It was like the perfect storm for those of us in the mortgage business. So assuming that doesn't come back, what do you kind of see is, let's just start with the biggest challenge, and then we'll talk about maybe the biggest opportunity. What's the biggest challenge that you find that loan officers or branch managers are kind of facing in today's market, and any ideas on what people are doing to solve for those challenges?
Yeah, I would say the two biggest challenges still obviously are inventory and qualifying. The average index of a home buyer to be able to qualify, I think truthfully, when you even look at the people that bought a home 2 years ago, could they qualify today?
Right.
And I don't necessarily know that. I think 80% of homeowners today are living paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of people are actually still wanting to move out of the state or the state that they're in to cross-pollinate and go different areas throughout the country, but rates aren't where they need to be in order for that to financially make sense, because they're still sitting on their 4 to 3% rate. So I think that the average homeowner is still looking to buy, and that is something that we need to try to help with affordability. I know that the government is creating additional products that are allowing that to happen, but I still find that there's a struggle with how we are looking at that and how we need to go about it. I think that the one thing that I see that those that are thriving is the relationships that they're creating during this time.
Well, look, I think that I was watching a podcast the other day, Craig, and I think this is interesting, and I don't know. I mean, this seemed like a reasonable solution. Is if you look at the statistics from like back in the 70s, right, which is really when they started building a lot of houses. I mean, they built, way more houses. I don't know the exact number, but
Sure.
way more houses in the 70s than they're building right now.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at a graph, it's like we were way up here and now we're way down here. And that hasn't changed since really the crash back in 08. I mean, builders just have not come back in force. But what was more interesting, and I think something we should really look at, is that what they are building are significantly larger houses. You look at the number of homes that was built in the 70s that were 1,300 square feet or 1,400 square feet and less. There was a lot of them, and you look at a lot of older neighborhoods, affordable housing was, 1,100 to 1,400 square foot. The first house that I even bought back in the 90s was 1,355 square foot. And I thought it was a mansion, to me, and I was in my early 20s. It was a starter home, right? I bought it with my girlfriend at the time. That didn't work out. That's another story. But, the thought was I could, potentially get married, start a family here in a 1,350 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage home.
Sure.
But if you look at what most builders are building, it's not that today. It's 2,500 square foot, or even you see a lot in that even higher end market.
Yeah.
And I feel like not only are the number of homes being built lower than it's ever been, the amount of affordable homes that are being built. So I think if the government was going to do anything, like let's give subsidies to builders or communities or people that are willing to dedicate land tracts for homes that are that are smaller. And I don't mean everyone should like move into a small home. Look, I don't live in a small home. I love my house. My wife thinks it's a little too big because she does most of the cleaning, but I like it, But it's also not my first house.
Sure.
I started with a much smaller house. The second house I bought was a little bit bigger, but it was a daylight basement. It was dated. I had to renovate it, you know. And like this is a normal progression. And each of those homes I made money on. I made equity, and I got to use it to buy the next home. And what we've done right now is we've taken these young people like my kids who are, one just graduated high school, one's graduating this year, and they're going to go to college, and you start thinking about what are they going to do in 4 or 5 years to buy a home. Dude, that's scary to think, It's like we need to start focusing on, I think, those entry-level homes. There's definitely some builders that do that, but the statistics show us that it's an underfunded. There's not enough happening for that entry-level buyer.
Absolutely.
And that's where a lot of the demand is, So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I thought it was a good solution, and I'd like to see if the government, they talked about, $25,000 tax credits for first-time home. How about we give tax credits to incent people to buy homes that are affordable?
Right. Well, and we know that, real estate is the vessel for, equity and wealth. And ultimately, if we can try to figure out some sort of way where the government can be of assistance, I think that you're right. That is the solution that we need. Otherwise, can they lower rates? But I think ultimately they're concerned with the economy and what that will do. So it's a give and a pull, and I don't really know what is going to happen, but I think that the upcoming months are going to be a little bit telling for 2025 and the years to come.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do a lot to intentionally lower interest rates. I think interest rates will naturally come down. I think they have to come down, but I don't see a lot of stimulus, if you will, to help that happen. Things could change, but I just don't see that happening. Okay, let's talk about opportunities. Challenging markets, in my mind, bring opportunities.
Absolutely.
So what do you see out there? I know one big opportunity is, the growth opportunity, right? Which you and I are really focused on. But let's just say besides the growth opportunity, is there any opportunities that you see right now for loan officers, say, let's say, loan officers?
Yeah, I really believe that right now is a pivotal time. Ultimately, we have a lot of loan officers that have gotten out of the business, and I think that it's a time right now for all of us to double down, especially during the winter months. Things get quiet, and this is the time where we can really build on relationships so that we can start 2025. I mean, I was listening to Dan Keller, one of our current coaches here in the region, and 2025 started 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Because if you think about it, as we go into this new year, when you get a customer that's looking to get pre-approved, they don't find a house that first day. Generally, it takes about 30 days. They're in contract the beginning of December, and then they close sometime at the beginning of January. So in essence, our 2025 has already started.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue it might have even started, a month and a half ago, right? Because really the activities you do today, they might, it takes 30 to 45 days, for a borrower to close, but, for a relationship to produce a referral, to produce, I mean, the activity you did 90 days ago is what you're seeing the results of today. So I couldn't agree more. I think the opportunity is in the scarcity and what's going on right now in the market. For those people that are willing to double down on their effort and relationship building and taking this time when a lot of people are going to kind of coast into the end of the year to really put it all out there. Now, look, don't get me wrong. Like, we all have families, I'm going to have a Thanksgiving, feast at my house. I got a bunch of people coming over. I'm going to enjoy Thanksgiving and probably the day after. But that next week, I'm not taking the week off. My calendar is packed the week after Thanksgiving. Absolutely. And I think that we should power right on through. Enjoy the holidays. Enjoy your family during this time of year. But then take every single moment that's available for business building and relationship building during the holidays and set yourself up for 2025. I couldn't agree more. It is the biggest opportunity, I think, right now, because the average person won't do that.
Correct.
And for those that want to win, you can do that. And when there's kind of scarcity out there, it's people like someone who's optimistic and energetic and out there, and they gravitate towards that. People want to be around that. So be that lighthouse, if you will,
100%.
that attracts people. All right, well, those were my questions, Craig. Look, I just want to thank you for making the trip up here in your Sprinter van. As we record this, I don't know, it's the 19th, so I don't know when exactly this will play, but if you've watched the weather here in the Pacific Northwest, we have this like winter storm. They call it like a low pressure bomb or something. So you came during, it looks like a tornado off of the coast of Washington. So blizzard conditions in the past and
power through the scarcity.
You get the 4x4 Sprinter van. So awesome, man. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate you being on Market Shares. Absolutely. For those of you that are watching, thank you for your time and attention. And really more than that, if you could let people know about Market Shares, that's my biggest thing. Like, I love it when people subscribe and you go, how many subscribers do you have? That's cool. But really for me, just like in my mortgage business for so many years, referrals are the heart of it. And I think this podcast will grow from people telling other people about it. And if you could do that for me, that would be super helpful. And until next time, take care and we'll see you then.